it just remains for me to introduce our speaker today, who is Hiro Hirai, an historian of Renaissance and early modern natural philosophy, medicine, and alchemy. Hiro received a PhD in philosophy and history of science from the University of Lille, and subsequently held many research fellowships, including several in Europe, in the United Kingdom, in Belgium and the Netherlands, and also at the Chemical Heritage Foundation, before it was the Science History Institute, of course, from 2008 to 9, when he studied matter and life in the philosophy of Daniel Sennett. Hiro is currently a research associate at the Center for Science and Society in Columbia University in the United States. Now, Hiro has published very widely, as I'm sure many of you know, in the field, including 2 monographs, the most recent of which was published by Brill in 2011, called Medical Humanism and Natural Philosophy. He's worked on 3 edited volumes and 3 special issues, and has also published numerous scholarly articles. Now, today he's talking about the role of pirate copies of Paracelsus' treatise on the nature of things, the making of the Paracelsian movement in natural philosophy and medicine. Now, this is, as he might well explain, is part of a larger collaborative research project of international scholars with Didier Kahn at the Centre National de Recherche Scientifique Paris, Pseudo-Paracelsus, Forgery and Early Modern Science, which he started in 2016. Now, this is starting to bear some published fruit. The first set of results is in 2 special issues, one in 2019 in the journal Early Science and Medicine, and the other Ambix, Journal of the History of Chemistry, earlier this year. And related to this, Hiro is preparing his 3rd monograph on Renaissance science, medicine, and magic. And I'm very pleased to say he's planning to spend a few months with us in the next academic year working on materials in our Debus collection, which is very rich in Paracelsian literature. So I have certainly said enough about Hiro's background and project, so I'll be very pleased to hand over to him to hear more about forgery and early modern science. Please, Hiro.
Thank you, Daniel, and hi, everyone. I will start my talk. In 2020, it is rare for a day to pass without talk of misinformation, disinformation, and even fake news. We are living in a world where it is very difficult to distinguish truth from fails due to the overload of information. Facts matter indeed. Especially in publications, the reliability of information is often supported by text authenticity. In the interest of securing facts and establishing authenticity, there was a growing awareness of intellectual property and copyright in early modern Europe. Unlike these notions, the issue of forgery is yet to be deeply studied in the history of science. The Swiss physician Paracelsus is best known for his severe criticism of university learning. His new medicine contributed to the shaping of chemistry as an autonomous discipline. He published very little during his lifetime, but his followers assiduously searched, collected, and published his writings from mid-1550s on, which fueled the so-called Paracelsian revival movement in the late 16th century. Along with ever-increasing interest in his writing and teachings, many forgeries were published under his name. Those forgeries often have a strong flavor of alchemy and occult philosophy and were widely read and influential. It is not an exaggeration to say that the modern image of Paracelsus owes much to these forgeries. Either due to accidental attributions or willful fraud, forgery was closely connected to the tradition of alchemy. Although Paracelsus himself was not an alchemist, he borrowed many terms and ideas from this tradition. and his followers saw their mutual kinship. Thus, many forgeries were produced using the customs of traditional alchemy to the extent that it became difficult to distinguish the genuine ideas and writings by Paracelsus from the later additions. So this is an image from a German movie of 1942 called Paracelsus, and he is represented exerting magical powers and so on. When Paracelsus became the object of modern studies, scholars faced an unusual degree of inconsistency and contradictions in his ideas and writings. Thus, the last few decades have seen increased effort in separating the genuine from the fake. Naturally, whole series of forgeries is excluded from serious surveys. However, the amount of such writings is considerable, and they deserve to be studied as historical phenomena. From this perspective, with my colleague Didier Kahn, I launched the research project on pseudo-Paracelsian literature in 2015. Since the range of problems is wide and diverse, we called on some 20 international scholars of various backgrounds to join us through several workshops and conferences. The first result of research have started to appear in publication, as Daniel kindly mentioned. In my talk today, I would like to focus on one aspect, that is, in terms of publication history. A strange work, The Natural Realm, or On the Nature of Things, or I will call Nature of Things here, was one of the most popular writings published in the name of Paracelsus. First released in 7 books in 1572, and in 9 books, 1584, it was translated into Latin in 7 books, and in 9 books, 1573 and 1605, thus securing a broad readership. This work is remarkable for its highly operative approach to the natural world, even preceding the works of Francis Bacon. The plethora of ideas expounded in this text falls in an elusive realm between magic and science. Some of them are inspired by the tradition of late medieval alchemy. Others have more affinity to the genuine teachings of Paracelsus, such as the 3 principles of nature, salt, sulfur, and mercury. Another set of ideas attracted the keen attention of leading minds of the time. Others were bitterly criticized by religious censorship. In its final form, Nature of Things is composed of 9 books. Each of the first 7 books addresses generation, growth, preservation, life or vivification, death or mortification, resurrection, and transmutation. Those topics are heavily influenced by the tradition of medieval alchemy and bear a coherent look as a whole. Added from the second edition of 1584, the last 2 books discuss separation and signature. The style of Nature of Things is noticeably systematic and didactic compared to the genuine writings of Paracelsus. It is thus possible to think that even if the original core fragments were composed by Paracelsus himself, it was reworked by its editor or another person before its publication. The aim of my paper is to place the genesis of this work in the context of publication history. It will show the extraordinary flowerings of forgeries ascribed to Paracelsus. Indeed, Nature of Things was first presented to readers when this movement of forgery production reached its climax. During this time, multiple editions of Paracelsus' genuine work Archidoxis were published, allowing ample possibilities for the inclusion of forgeries. Which writings of Paracelsus were available for the author, reworker, or editor of Nature of Things? If it is not by Paracelsus himself, and if he did not have easy access to the manuscript attributed to this name. Let us examine chronological order of publication some major works which address the related themes discussed in Nature of Things. Those are the kind of selected list. And there are two items to be noticed deserve special mention. In yellow, philosophy of Athenian studies suspected as forgery, but scholars are divided. And brown, it's clear forgery. The work entitled Philosophy to the Athenians, published 1564, was the earliest major printed work which was suspected as a forgery by modern specialists. Although it contains some striking ideas contradictory to Paracelsus' genuine teachings, it exerted a considerable impact on the followers of Paracelsus in the 16th and 17th century. The second major one, the Book of Fixation, or Liber Vexatione, published in probably Basel 1567, was edited by one of the early German followers of Paracelsus, Adam von Bodenstein. Fixatione, in the title, is an ordinary operation in alchemical procedure and shows its natural inclination toward alchemy. This work was later renamed as Heaven of Philosophers, Coelum Philosophorum, in the monumental edition of Paracelsus' works edited by Johannes Huser. However, the modern editor of Paracelsus' work, Karl Züdhoff, rejected its authenticity. After all those publications, then comes Archidoxis Libri. It's here. I don't know if you can see it. Right after Liber Vexatione. Then comes one of the most famous genuine texts of chemical nature by Paracelsus, 9 books of Archidoxis, published in Krakow, 1569. It was first edited in Latin by Silesian physician Adam Schroeter. Its German edition immediately followed it from Pietro Kellner's place in Basel under the title of 10 Books of Archidoxis. I will return to these later more fully. After the publication of these items, Adam von Bodenstein produced a collection of Paracelsus' works, symbolically entitled Metamorphoses. It contains 11 books as its first part, followed by some more books as its second part. This is the Metamorphoses. The first 7 books of Metamorphoses are grouped under the title of Von Natürlichen Dingen, of Natural Things. Confusingly, there are another work of the same title, which was published 2 years before in 1570. That is most likely why its title was changed to the Natural Realm from its second edition in 1584. Strangely enough, the collection has no 8th book, but contains Cementations as the 9th book, Gradations as 10th book, and Projections as the 11th book, although the latter was said to be unwritten. These items makes the first part of the collection. As for the second part, it includes Manual of Philosopher's Stone and Alchemy. Later in 1605, Huser, the editor of the monumental edition, retained the first piece as genuine, but doubted the second one's authenticity by placing it among superior works. In its original setting, Bodenstein's marketing strategy can be grasped well. But it turns out to be ordinary chemical operations, such as calcination and distillation. Most readers would have expected the further description of advanced operations for the real transmutation of metals. That was what Bodenstein tried to offer by gathering the pieces on cementation, gradation, and projection, along with the manual for the philosopher's stone. The second edition of Nature of Things, published in 1584, appeared with the addition of the 8th book on separation and the 9th book on natural science. This edition has no other additional material. The editorial line of Lucas Patodius can be grasped with ease. He avoided incorporating doubtful materials. Now let us return to Archidoxis, a genuine work, in its publication history. Indeed, it is necessary to give a closer look at its evolution so as to contextualize the genesis of Nature of Things and its first edition in Bodenstein's collection Metamorphoses. Before going into detail, let us give a quick look to the title and the structure of Archidoxis according to the major collected works of Paracelsus. In the monumental edition of 1590, its editor Huser included Archidoxis at the head of the 6th volume for the writings dealing with the chemical operation of natural things. He entitled the work 10 books of Archidoxis on the mystery of nature. However, immediately after the warnings to readers, Huser placed the table of contents with the following title: the first part of Archidoxis, 9 books on the mystery of nature. Indeed, the publishing situation between 10 books and 9 books reflected the complex publication history of the work. At any event, the body of Archidoxis is presented as 9 books in the table. So book 1, Microcosmos, book 2, Elements, book 3, Quintessences, book 4, Arcana, book 5, Magisters, book 6, Specifics, book 7, Elixirs, and book 8, Extrinsics, and book 9, Practice. But according to this table, the 9th book is said to be unprinted. Thus, the work actually has only 8 books. To make the situation more complex, Huser actually printed these components in the following order by leaving the 2nd book as missing. The contents are the same, but our ordering of the books slightly different, especially book 2. Most later editions and modern standard editions adopted this structure. Now, let us penetrate into the complex evolution of publication history. As has been seen, the first edition in Latin was published in 1569. Its editor Schroeter claimed to have translated it from German. As its title, 10 books of Archidoxis suggests, it contains 10 books. But Schroeter argued that only 8 books were extant. He placed them in the following order: Microcosm, Element, Quintessence, Arcana, Magisters, Specifics, Elixirs, and Extrinsics. To remedy the missing parts, Schroeter added 2 short works, Renovation and Long Life. they are marked in green here. This is the first appearance of both texts. They were the early writings of Paracelsus and closely related to each other. Since Archidoxis was also a composition of his early career, their styles and contents bear strong resemblance. Thus, Schroeter's editorial choice could be accepted by readers without major contestation. Note that the main scope of Archidoxis is more chemical and pharmacological than renovation and long life, which concern rather regimen and longevity. Next year, in 1570, Pietro Berna of Basel published the first German edition, 10 books of Archidoxis. Although its title announces 10 books, it contains only 9. Berna followed Schroeter's choice to include renovation and long life, but he inserted the former in the place of the first text on microcosm, which is in turn placed at the head of the whole text as a preface. So the ordering becomes like this. Berna's editorial choice is striking. With the first Latin edition and Berna's German edition, perhaps also boosted by the interesting topic of longevity offered by long life, when the book market reached an unimaginable height. In the same year of 1570, 2 editions were published in Basel, 2 others in Munich, 1 in Strasbourg, and the other in Cologne. This is a rare case for a scientific book of the time. As one of these 6 editions was executed in the same format by Berna himself, let us examine the evolution of the 4 others. One German edition was edited by Michael Toxites in Strasbourg. Apparently, this edition did not follow Berna's choice to place the text on microcosm as a preface, but reverted back to Schroeter's ordering. Interestingly, in terms of marketing, Toxites presented 10 books of Archidoxis as the first part of his collection. He added 2 more items, Tincture of Physicians as its second part and Occult Philosophy as its third. So it's like this, and you have 10 books of Archidoxis and second part, Tincture of Physicians, and Occult Philosophy as third part. This is the first appearance of both works, which the modern editor Sudhoff placed among forgeries. Thus, this edition provided an interesting twist to the evolution of the Archidoxis publication. Another German edition was published in Munich by Johann Albrecht. He entitled it as 9 books of Archidoxis, naming the 9th book as Practice, but unwritten. So this part is missing. Its structure is as follows, microcosm elements and so on. And thus, this edition has only 8 books. But probably adopting the editorial choice of his forerunner, Toxites, Albrecht presented this set as the first part of his collection, followed by the second part, with the 4 other texts: Preparations, Tincture of Physicians, Renovations, and Long Life. The first item, Preparation, is a collection of recipes. It's considered as early work related to the renovation and long life by Paracelsus. By contrast, Tincture of Physicians is a clear forgery of alchemical nature. Moreover, Albrecht issued another edition under the striking title of 12 Books of Archidoxis. In the same year, its structure is as follows, as you see in PowerPoint. It also contains 4 other supplementary materials, which are the same as those of his former edition. Thus, the unusual number of 12 in the title resulted from the addition of 8 extant books and 4 supplementary materials. Lastly, 9 books of Archidoxis was issued from the important press of Arnold Wickman in Cologne. Significantly, it bears the suggestive overarching title of On the Mysteries of Nature. As its first part, it includes 8 books, as is seen in the PowerPoint. It is followed by 2 familiar works, Renovations and Long Life, as the second part of the collection. Further supplementary materials of genuine nature are added to this set of text on minerals, and short pieces on minerals, short text on salts, vitriol, arsenic, and sulfur. These items are considered genuine by modern specialists. Thus, this edition emphasizes a mineralogical dimension along with the regimen and longevity by relying on the genuine text of Paracelsus. All these editions show the unusual high expectation of German readers vis-à-vis Archidoxis. Pietro Berna of Basel did not miss this commercial opportunity in the international book market. His collaborator Gerard Doron prepared for him the second Latin edition as 10 books of Archidoxis, or On the Secret Mystery of Nature in 1570. In this occasion, however, the duo of Perna and Doron corrected their initial error by placing the piece on microcosm as the first book, so as to make 10 books as the title announced. In this Latin edition, Archidoxis is followed by second part, tincture of physicians, preparations, fixations, cementation, and gradations. Although the line of regimen and longevity is kept with the inclusion of renovation and long life, alchemical dimension is more emphasized by these supplementary materials, some of which are clear forgeries. Apparently, the inclusion of the fake text led to the duo of Perna and Doron to produce an exclusive collection of such text in Latin for the international book market. Suggestively entitled 3 Books on the Supreme Mysteries of Nature, this collection was published in the same year of 1570. It includes Spirits of Planets, followed by Occult Philosophy and Zodiac Signs. Remarkably enough, the last item addresses the production of talismans and was to form the first half of the notorious magical Archidoxis. Its authenticity is obviously rejected by modern scholars. This is the first appearance of zodiac signs. As for the short text, Spirits of Planets, it turned out to be the translation of Alchemia, the German version of which was also to be included later in Bodenstein's collection. This exclusive collection in Latin of an alchemical and occultist dimension likely won a commercial success in the international book market. Perna decided to produce a larger collection of the same sort in German in the following year, 1571. It consists of the text which had been already published to date. Endowed with a strong flavor of alchemy and occult philosophy, it includes Spirits of Planets, Tincture of Physicians, Gradations, Cementations, and Zodiac Signs. It is then easy to imagine that Upon the success of these collections, Perna and Doron were motivated to provide a fully enhanced edition of Archidoxis next year. On its title page, they explicitly announced that new materials has been added. These new texts are time, images, and magical orthodoxies. Among them, time is only the first item of the 5 short tracts. Along this set of 5 tracts, the first appearance of images is of great interest, since it develops a remarkable discussion on the production of homunculus, as in the first book of Nature of Things. It is significant that these 2 works, Images and the Nature of Things, were published for the first time in the same town of Basel in the same year of 1572. As for the magical orthodoxies, this collection by Doron and Perna duo includes its later part, composition of metals as book 6, constellation of a mirror as book 5, and the marks of planets as book 7, in the order of inclusion in the collection. So it's a strange order, 657, but it's published as such. Dealing with the production of talismans and with astrological images engraved on stones and minerals, it is highly doubtful that these texts were genuine works by Paracelsus. As a conclusion, now it is possible to locate the genesis of Bodenstein's collection, Metamorphoses, in its own context of publication history. This collection of 1572 included first edition of Nature of Things as its head, followed by the text which shared a strong inclination toward alchemy. Although Orthodoxis, one of the most successful works of Paracelsus, announced 10 books in its title, 2 books were missing in its manuscript. Through its multiple publications, various editors try to fulfill the missing parts by complementing diverse texts. This genuine work of Paracelsus first appeared in 1569 with its emphasis on regimen and longevity by its supplementary materials, innovation and long life. Then it gradually absorbed the different texts endowed with the dimension of alchemy as its supplements. More and more works of doubtful nature and origin were put together. The central figure of this move were, without doubt, the duo of Pietro Perna and Gerald Doron. They went even further to produce a collection of dubious works of alchemical character in Latin, 1570, and then a larger collection of same dimension in German, 1571. Then they released the fully enhanced edition of Archidoxis in 1572, in line with these productions with a strong flavor of alchemy and occult philosophy. At the climax of this movement, in the same town of Basel, in the same year of 1572, appeared Bodenstein's collection endowed with highly alchemical, with alchemically suggestive title of Metamorphoses. In its collection, Nature of Things played a crucial role of providing the theoretical basis for these alchemical forgeries. It is probable that only a select few leaders of the time, like Johann Huser, who could carefully study the manuscripts of Paracelsus, were able to distinguish the genuine and the fake in the flood of publications. This mixture of genuine and the fake definitively contributed to the emergence of Paracelsus' legendary image as the patron of alchemy and occult philosophy. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks very much, Hiro. So yeah, if you use the chat function to send me any questions, please, or also email me at lunchtimelectures@sciencehistory.org. Let me go straight to a question from Susan Burke. Here, I'll send you the question through the chat because requires, I think, some concentration. So she is asking, for the books within these different editions of Archidoxis, which have names in common, is the content of those books identical? So that's one thing. And for the editions with new books which are in common, was the content of the new books identical?
Content means maybe text-wise. They are mostly identical, the title and the content. So editors meticulously copied the original publication. I could answer to the question.
So the question had two parts. She wanted to clarify that she was asking about a comparison between the original books of the same name within different editions, and also a comparison between added books of the same name within different editions.
It's I'm reading the question. Comparison between the original books of the same. Also comparison between added. I don't see the difference from the first question. In a sense, textually, these are almost identical. No interpolations or change made by editors of the time, except some minor typos and misprint. Is that what she's asking?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I try to understand the reasoning, but maybe we can move on to another question from Alex Cooper, who is asking if you had any clues as to who the authors of the forgeries may have actually been, the editors or the other Paracelsians, for example.
Actually, no. We still don't have clear clue for the identity, but right after so this is based on my article, and my colleague studied into the manuscript discovered recently, and according to that manuscript, that was the text was composed right before the publication, around latest 1560s, and so it's clear forgery that it's not by Paracelsus himself, but we still don't know the identity. And in Paracelsus studies, nobody found any concrete names. So we are still in the beginning of research.
So what kinds of indications or evidence would allow you to ascertain that kind of information?
For about the dating, for example, my colleague, he used the watermark of paper and tried to identify the paper was produced in around which year and from which region, and those kind of very different approaches from mine. So and his study also published in one of special issues, in Ambix.
So the broader project that you've been working on, the pseudo-Paracelsus forgery in early modern science, scholars who are involved in that, are they rooted in different fields, not just in the study of Renaissance and early modern natural philosophy, but also in book history, for example?
Still, we are relatively historians of chemistry, alchemy, and some Paracelsians, because they also kind of we try to first make a contact with those scattered specialists to bring together to study and to share our knowledge. And next step might be to include specialists of book history and also specialists of forgery itself and different field of specialists, you know.
Good. I have a question from Jane Gale, who'd like to know more about the historical context. So in particular, why all the different publications on this topic between this very narrow period of 1570 and 1572?
Because why it's so narrow in a sense that the beginning of the forgery production is concentrated that period, and I kind of tried to locate what was the cause, and the cause was the orthodoxis, which is missing promised two books, and the diverse editors try to put something to make 10, and this make some kind of move dynamism to stimulate to add the strange text under Paracelsus' name, and my theory or my guess is that the nature of things follow the similar path. At least when it's presented in first edition.
Good. Hiro, could you tell us more about the work that you're planning to do at the Institute over the next academic year?
Okay.
Reflections that is fruitful for your study.
Yes. This nature of things is very curious text. It's half science, half magic. And one of the interesting theme is generation, also production, formation of something. So it's the birth of something. And you can read how to produce a homunculus, the human, small, tiny human being in a flask and so on. And so the idea of life cycle and generation is very prominent in that text. And I would like to compare with another type of very popular text, which is not so long, but still have some type of learning. The text attributed to Albertus Magnus. So it's a series of pseudo Alberto Magnus texts, which is very, very popular in 16th century and reprinted so many times. And fortunately, Science History Institute has a whole bunch of editions, and it's a nice place to study and compare the nature of things and that pseudo Albertus text. Both texts emphasize on the generation and formation of natural things, and especially living beings.
So how widely did these texts actually circulate in the early modern period then? Are we talking Europe or transatlantic in that case?
Oh, in the States, I have no idea, and Asia or other part. I just starting the project on comparison with pseudo Alberta's text, and that was the print. It was more than 100 times reprinted over 100 years, and it's enormous. So I can't tell for now the reach and the range in worldwide, but that text was enormously influential and widely read, but very few people are really studied.
Okay. I have a question from Bob Davidson, who's asking if the forgers profited from their work. Did they receive money from the sale of these books? I mean, presumably they must have, otherwise the forgery wouldn't have gone ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm not a specialist of real commerce of book production and book business. So I have very slight knowledge about that, and I can't answer those questions. But actually, book production was a business, and that's the aspect I wanted to emphasize in my paper too. And sometimes they can easily combine totally different things to just sell to gain market success in book market.
Thanks, Hiro. Well, if there are no further, a question has just come in from our curator of rare books and manuscripts, so I definitely should ask that before we finish. Jim is asking what other kinds of publications Perna was producing.
Perna, oh, he is Italian, but Protestant, so he was considered a heretic, and he moved to Basel, and then he started his business, and he published a lot of alchemy and magical text and so on, but also he published humanist books, learned books too. So that is also an interesting topic. Jim, right?
Yeah, James Vogel, yes.
Want to buy some?
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be looking forward to welcoming you back. So we'll definitely be hearing more from Hiro as his project and his monograph develops, assuming, of course, that we can get back to the library and to our sources, which is a little bit tricky at the moment. Let me just briefly mention the lecture that we'll have next week, which is a special one because ordinarily we'd get all the fellows and staff together from the American Philosophical Society into the Science History Institute. In fact, we had the opposite lecture, what we call an exchange lecture, a few months ago. But we're running this one online. It's Gina Sarita from Princeton, and she's talking about experimental physiology, the mysterious muscle experimental epistemologies of force and fuel. So I'll be very, very pleased to share that one next week and to welcome some of our colleagues virtually across, I suppose, from the APS. So thanks so much, Hiro. I will catch up with you before too long about fellowship matters and so on. And I just want to remind everyone, if you're looking for more events for the Science History Institute, please check out our events calendar, and you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. So I will wish everybody well, stay safe, stay busy, and thanks very much again to Hiro. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.